Hey everyone, it's Christian, your local realtor, and the topic for today's video is the collapse that never comes. And I wanted to give it this title because as I was doing research for this video, I was coming across some interesting numbers and anecdotes that suggest that we might be moving into a low listings environment. And I'm going to get into what I mean by that in a moment. But certainly here on the West Coast, in the Vancouver area, we have sort of the really far hippie segment of the population that always seems to be cheering for a market collapse. And my first question would be, what do we mean by a collapse? Because if you look at the numbers right now, we've already come down quite significantly from our highs. If you were to trace the highs for Greater Vancouver, Fraser Valley, earlier in 2022, we're already down from that. So we've seen a significant downturn. For example, in Fraser Valley, the average home price for a detached is $1.47 million. However, from the high point this year, the prices are actually down by about 24%. So that's all, there's your downturn, right? And in Vancouver, we had homes reach up to $2.3 million. And of course, now they're just at about $1.97 million, which is year on year flat. That's where they were a year ago. From the high point in 2022, they are down. So about $320,000. So what I want to do now in this video is talk a little bit about why we may not get that big collapse that some people seem to be cheering for, which I think is really driven by envy that you and I have gotten into the market and they haven't. So the first thing is that with the mortgage rates being in the 5% range now, and you factor in the stress test, and you're looking at 7.5% to get qualified, well, buyers' buying power is cut by 20%. So that's going to make it a lot harder for them to buy, let's say that $1.2 million home. Now they can only pay about $1 million or purchase that much. So that's going to curtail demand somewhat, and certainly what people can offer. Now the second thing to understand here, and I got this from reading a Wall Street Journal article. They were looking at Americans, and 2/3 of Americans have mortgages under 4%. And they call this the golden handcuffs. This is when you're a homeowner, you've got a sweetheart fixed rate interest, and you just can't imagine selling and leaving that to go buy and pay today's 6% interest rate, which is what they're seeing down in the United States. And the article was saying, in essence, that very few Americans, and they find through studies of the bank, Freddie Mac, that when Americans see that their fixed rate interest that they have on their home is more than 2% below what is offered in the lending market, they stay put. Don't be surprised if we see that here in Canada as well. I know that just anecdotally talking to a lot of individuals and clients, for those clients who have a 2.5% interest rate mortgage right now, they can't imagine going out and paying double that, right? And so there's another factor to consider here too, is let's say a couple is upsizing and they're going from a $600,000 condo to a $1.2 million townhouse. They can port their mortgage, right? They can take their part, whatever the mortgage remains, keep that fixed interest rate, which is so low, and move it over to the new home. But you still have to make up the difference. And of course, that's when you're going to get the high interest rate mortgage, which is just gonna make it uncomfortable for a lot of people. So I think the psychology that we're gonna see could set in, is that a lot of people just say, you know what, I'm gonna ride out this low fixed rate mortgage. I'm gonna try to save as much as I can, and I'm gonna hope that prices are where they are now, or maybe even lower for a bigger home, a detached home, a townhouse, and I'll be able to make the jump 2, 3, 4 years from now when my fixed rate expires. Expect to see that. And when we do look at listings, it's interesting. The listings numbers for the Greater Vancouver area, we have seen them come down. So we had 3,960 listings and a month ago, and we're at 3,328 listings in August of 2022. So quite low. That's last year at this time we're at about 4,000 listings. So very low supply. And of course, if there's one thing that does keep prices stable or high in the Vancouver area, is that supply is so low, and that just tends to be a hallmark of our market. When you have so few options, even with so few buyers out there, it still means that prices stay higher. And finally, mortgage delinquencies. You may hear this talked about as well. This is the number of homes that go into foreclosure. Owners can't pay their mortgage, and so the bank takes back possession and sells the home through the court. And the number of homes in foreclosure is still very, very low in British Columbia. There were 777 homes in foreclosure, and that is out of just under 712,000 mortgages all across British Columbia. In other words, about 1 in 1,000 homes goes into foreclosure, which is kind of what I find. Just anecdotally, when I'm going through listings, I probably find about 1 in 1,000, which is very, very low. And so I don't see too much in the way of foreclosures coming onto the market, at least not from anyone who has a low fixed rate interest rate. So we'll have to monitor that as we go forward and see how this comes about. But I don't believe that we're going to see that great big collapse that you sometimes hear talked about in real estate circles. We've already seen the downturn, and so if you've got more questions or comments, you could leave those below, and give us a subscribe or a thumbs up. We really do appreciate it.